Hello, everyone. Today I want to talk about the vertical slant in handwriting. My name is Marcel Elvers, Master Provider through Written Communication. Please like my channel. Above all, share and subscribe. And if you like a video, put it on your playlist. Here we see 3 handwriting samples, and they're all women in their mid-20s. This is Jodi Arias, Amanda Knox, and Casey Anthony. And there are some similarities in their handwriting that is probably consistent with age. When we look at the handwriting, we can always see that handwriting is a behavior and an expression of our mindset, as well as our general personality. Now we see that all these handwritings have a vertical slant, and basically what that means is these people tend to be a little bit more cautious. They think before they speak. Now, with that comes, because they think before they speak, it also shows that they tend to be calmer during stressful situations. Now, they may have a lot of inner turmoil, but they won't show it. Here is Gary Ridgway, also a very disconnected, meaning poor bonding ability, and a vertical writer. Gary Ridgway passed 2 polygraphs. He has an enormous flat effect and does not respond to polygraph tests on an emotional basis. Back to Amanda Knox and Casey Anthony. Both these writers, unlike Jodi Arias, have a stronger mid-zone emphasis. And that is, of course, at the time of the writing. This writing is from 10 years ago, so they might write quite a bit differently today. But at the time of the writing, they were both immature, and meaning they have short upper zones, so they don't access their reasoning, thinking, imagination zone, also where moral capacity resides. So they basically don't access that because they live in the moment. They live in the here and now. And so they are socially immature because they pay attention to now, but not to the consequences. So there's no introspection and no retrospection. Now, we also see a big difference because Amanda Knox has better spacing. The letters are a little bit wider and separated, whereas Casey Anthony has more cramped up writing, which means she is more cautious, more wound up, more closed off. Now, Casey Anthony, for instance, has smaller. And having said that, that is linked to people that are faster thinkers because they put the pen on the paper really quick after the last word. But they also write slower, so they think fast, but they think more about how to write what. That's why they write slower. Now, the letter spacing with Casey Anthony is really uptight and closed off. Some letters, like the O and N in Monday, for instance, even overlap, meaning uptight, close-mindedness, keeping things to herself. We also see a left-handing K buckle where the K buckle exceeds the stem to the left. And of course, we see retracing. Retracing is nothing else than a downstroke being retraced by the following upstroke. We see that in the N, the M, and the H quite frequently. That is linked to repression of past trauma, not willing to think about the pains of the past. Interestingly, in this writing, and this is her police narrative, she has quite a bit of spacing, way more than usual, around the PPI, or the personal pronoun I. And that suggests that Casey wanted to keep people away from her. We have seen this trait before, where a letter suddenly drops below the baseline. And we see that in her name, Casey, as well as the name of her daughter, Kaylee. And that suggests something happened there that emotionally affected her and she lost control. Letters that suddenly drop below the baseline is linked to poor urge control. So when we see a mid-zone emphasis, these People tend to live in the moment. They have a tendency to need a recognition, to be accepted. And of course, we see that often in teenagers. They haven't settled in their personality yet. They don't know who they are. They don't know how to fit in. And that is normal. But of course, they are also emotionally uncomplicated. And for teenagers, or even up till age 25, because up till age 25, the frontal lobe has not been fully developed. That is immaturity expected. But when you see the writing of a mature male in his 40s, that is vertical and cramped up and written slow, and it has a mid-zone emphasis. They are also emotionally immature. However, you would not expect that. And therefore, the conclusion then is based on age, that they are potentially emotionally stunted. And that is because of childhood trauma. We also see that both Casey Anthony and this writer, Richard, overlap their letters, which is a trait of deception, and have very short D stems. And that suggests they do whatever they want without taking others into consideration. So both cramp their letter spacing and overlap letter formations, and both are known to be deceptive. By the way, this author is Richard Allen Davis. He kidnapped Polly Klaas from her home, murdered her later, and he was the impetus of the 3 strikes, you're out law. So back to Amanda and Casey. People that write their circular structures like an O closed off, but we also see that in letters A, the body of the G and the B. When these letters are closed off, they tend to be private individuals. They don't share secrets. So you can share your secrets with them because they won't talk about it, or they tend to not talk about it. But Casey really closes off her letters, her letter O's. You can see there's enormous overlap in the circle structure. And in some, like the 3 years old on the bottom right, you even see a little lip inside the circle. And that is called a split tongue. Structures inside circular structures, especially in the mid-zone, tend to mean muddies conversation, not telling the truth, and is a deception characteristic. We know another person that does that, and his name is O.J. Simpson. Now, this is a true split tongue because it comes from the top. George Anthony, the father of Casey Anthony, was suspicious of Casey. And he basically, in his police narrative, showed that a little bit. He called his spouse, Cindy, and called his son, Lee, who should call his mom, and told him briefly about Casey. She was on hold of my spouse. Again, my spouse talks about Kaylee Marie, our granddaughter. I inquired my spouse. So all these titles are family relationships. But Casey did not get my daughter Casey. And subconsciously, George Anthony basically distanced himself. Casey Anthony had been lying about the whereabouts of Kaylee for 30 days, and the former detective had an eerie feeling, most likely. And Casey herself was fully aware. On the left, we see her signature. On the police narrative, her initials were fully circled, which means self-protection. Her last name is also circled, self-protection. But after a few weeks in jail, or months maybe, I don't recall, the last name completely dropped. She no longer felt at that time part of the family. Interestingly, the top poll basically said she's guilty of murder as about 50% and guilty of a lesser charge 31%. This was done about 10 years ago during the trial, and there were something like 5,000 plus respondents, I recall. I did not write that down, but I do recall that. Now, of the 343 votes that I got on the YouTube channel, we see a very similar distribution, with about 59% saying she was involved in the murder of her daughter. I leave it at this. So pay attention to vertical slant. And it basically means I think before I speak and tend to be calmer during stressful situations.